Hi, this is Deb Watson. Today we're painting a simple landscape step by step. We'll start with the sky and the clouds. Mix a light puddle of cobalt or ultramarine blue and another light puddle of burnt sienna. Wet your sky with clear water or very light blue. Use a big wash brush for the best results. Then mop in a little more color. When I say mop, I mean load up your brush, then lay it on your paper and drag it around without lifting it back up. This will dry much lighter. For the sky color, mix a medium value puddle of just blue. Paint the sky behind the clouds with blue. You want the edges to be interesting, but don't sweat them. We'll be working on the clouds again at the end. If you have standing water around the edges of your paper, be sure you wipe it off. Next, paint the distant hills. Mix a big puddle of purple, that's blue with a little red, and another puddle of brown. Use a small brush for these. Paint some area purple, then dip your brush in the brown and keep painting. That's a variegated wash, which is what this lesson is all about. When you practice something several times in a row, you'll start to master this technique. For the stone barn, use your blue and your brown. Wet the paper and paint on some areas of each color. You want this to dry light, so keep the paint watery. The red barn will also be light. Check the instructions on how to mix the barn red. Add shadows with a darker mix of blue and brown. Not too dark though. Shadows under the roof and shingles on the top. For the red barn, shadows go under the eave. You can add a few board lines also. Now make a very dark mix of blue and brown, almost to black. Just use a lot of paint. Paint a dark line directly under the eaves and in the ventilation slots. For the roof of the barn, just a light coat of any color, but then scratch into the wet wash to draw shingles. You can add more paint to the barn if you need it, but be sure you keep it light in value. The trees are not light. They are very concentrated, a red, brown, and black mix. Don't worry if your tree doesn't look exactly like mine. No two trees are alike. But do try to leave some holes for the birds to fly through. Mix it up with your values. You want some areas darker and some areas more watery. Paint the left side trees with the same colors. They need to be lighter or darker than the distant hills in order to show up. The foreground is, you guessed it, another variegated wash. I'm starting by wetting the paper with brown and then painting on reddish brown and black. You want the foreground to be very saturated. Just keep adding paint until it's done. Here I'm spattering color on, but I got tired of spattering before the color was dark enough, so I just went back to my brush. First more brown and then some black. While you have black, add a shadow on the right side of the building. Now it's time to finish the clouds. I'm using a small piece of damp Mr. Clean's Magic Eraser to rub off some of the cloud color. Rub in circles and turn the piece of sponge or rinse it out if you pick up a lot of paint. You can also gently rub the edges of the clouds to soften them up. Isn't that an amazing difference for just a little lifting? In the backfield, I decide I need an accent color, so I'm putting in a little yellow. Now for the stones in the stone barn. You don't want your stones very dark. Keep them light and blue and brown shades. There's a reference photo in the online lesson so you can see how actual stones look in our stone barns here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Don't forget to add the stones in the shadow area also. When I evaluate this, I want my trees redder. So here's a little more red on top. And even a little more yellow too. Last comes the opaque white. I'm spattering white on top of the foreground. Spattering adds a sense of movement to the painting. You can also use white to add a fence or two. You can use white to brighten up the clouds anywhere you want, or to touch up the edges of the roof. And if you don't like your white, just reactivate it with a damp brush and dab it off. I'm putting a small dark fence back here, one that leads back into my painting. Last, grass is always nice, but don't overdo it. And there you have a simple stone barn from Lancaster County. This is our lesson for the week, and you can see how the class did in the online lesson. We have a lot of beginners. If they can do it, so can you. Visit Watson Watercolor to get started painting now. It's fun and easy when you go step by step. You'll find lots of tips on getting started on a budget, like only using 3 colors, or maybe 3.5. Happy painting!